This is the Fearless Experience with Brendan P. Keegan. Conversations with leaders who provide valuable, candid insights from their journeys and share their secrets to what made them successful and fearless.
Today's fearless leader is Eric Price, Managing Director and Head of U.S. Capital Markets at CIBC. With over 2 decades in the financial services industry, he's had a chance to lead teams both in North America and the U.S. and internationally. He's worked on equity derivative desks, he's been a trader, and now he's leading the firm across the U.S. Eric, welcome to the Fearless Experience podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Brendan.
So, hey, my first question is going to take you way back to elementary school. So you're in financial services, you're doing stock trading, but in elementary school, when the teacher had everybody stand up and say, what do you want to be? And, kids stood up and said, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a policeman. I want to be a doctor. What did little Eric stand up and say he wanted to do?
That's a great question. Well, my dad was a dentist. So
Did you say dentist?
No, I didn't think there was spending my life putting my fingers in other people's mouths was not what I thought I wanted to do. No, I don't remember. Firemen and policemen didn't come in. Doctor was interesting, but kind of gross. I don't know about 7. By the time I was 7th grade, so 13, I'm not sure I said it, but I got very interested in the financial world because I got Bar Mitzvah in God knows what year, the 1940s. And one of my Bar Mitzvah gifts from my Uncle Peter, who's my mother's younger sister's husband, who was a professor in some school in Boston. He gave me some AT&T, I don't know how many shares, a share of the old AT&T before it was broken up and it was still called American Telegraph and Telephone or Telephone and Telegraph. And I didn't know what it was, but it was the actual stock certificate. And I learned to I asked enough questions about it and I asked enough questions about it. It was the days long before the internet. You open up the Wall Street Journal and there were the stocks listed in the market section, and I learned how to find it and learn what that piece of paper was worth. And I just found it interesting to watch it moving up and down every day and why it moved up and down and what was going on. And so, I know your kids are very interested in markets and finance. And so there's sort of a thing about it that some people think is great. And some people are like, I could absolutely never do that for a living. So I found it great. And so that sort of began the, at least, interest in the markets.
And Uncle Peter should have taken a share in you. He should have had like a name, image, and likeness contract with you, and he should be making some money off your income now. So fast forward. So Uncle Peter got the ball rolling. Get you a couple shares of AT&T. You got interested. Now walk me through from your bar mitzvah to getting into the financial services industry. How did you break in? Where did you break in? What did you do? Like, what were the early stages of your career?
Shortcutting through the rest of my education, I came out of UMass with a marketing degree, and one of my first jobs, I stayed in the financial sector. I looked a little bit at advertising on the financial side of it, like buying airtime and things. I did that for a minute. I didn't enjoy that. But while I was doing that, I was applying to Wall Street firms. And these are the days of Kidder Peabody and Drexel Burnham and Payne Weber and Bear Stearns and all these names that, will give a lot of people flashbacks and nightmares. And eventually in a short time, I quit that advertising job. And I would every day, I had a crappy 486DX computer in my studio apartment downtown in New York City. And I would print out a cover letter and a resume, and I would always send it. Someone gave advice, you don't send them to HR department. So when I would read the Wall Street Journal, it would say, oh, Bob Smith of Kidder Peabody said something. Like every day, if you read the paper today, they still do that.
Absolutely.
So to say. So I found their address and I mailed the letter to them. And I must have done 100 and something of those. And every now and then I'd get a phone call to come in and interview. and I got one from Citibank to go in an interview, which was really close. Like I remember thinking the Citibank one was going to happen. At the end, I was a call. I got one. I was a cold caller for Payne Weber. They called me and they said you can come in and be a cold caller, that's a terrible job. There were two rules of being a cold caller, which probably still hold true today. If you're going to cold call someone, you either make the sale or you get hung up on. Those are the only two options.
Yeah.
There was a manual, there was a printout of how you come back on any objection.
Yep.
So Mr. Keegan, you would tell me you want to discuss this with your wife. Mr. Keegan, do you discuss business decisions with your wife? No, you do not. This is a business decision. Why don't I put you down for 10,000, Mr. Keegan? What's your social security number?
Oh man. But that's old school. That's boiler room.
Yeah, that was old school. That was boiler room stuff. But not that Payne Weber was a boiler room, but that's, cold calling. So eventually Drexel Burnham, which was on 70 Pine Street, called me and it's the usual interview process. And then a guy came in, and at that point I wasn't working. I mean, I was not smart enough to realize I had to have a job, I guess. And so I lived in a studio. I was doing this. I wasn't working very much in any. I had the cold calling job, which paid, I don't remember, minimum wage. But that was only during the day for a few hours. And so at night, I lived down in the West Village. And at the end of the street was a store called the Pink Pussycat, which is actually still there.
Real.
It's not a strip joint. It sells adult entertainment material, stuff.
We'll go with stuff.
We'll go with stuff. I think this is a PG rated podcast. And I remember this guy named Bobby Turner was interviewing me. And clearly I didn't differentiate probably of, all the other people who wanted to do this for a living. And he lived downtown in Soho. He'd lived in this South Soho, and he kept asking me questions about where I live. And we'd come off the interview questions, which I learned to handle, but we were just having a personal talk. And somehow I said, well, I work in retail. He's like, well, what do you do? And I'm a cold caller. Yeah, and anything else? I'm like, well, I work in retail. And he's like, what do you mean you work in retail? I'm like, well, in my apartment, I work in retail. So I finally said, I work at the Pink Pussycat. He's like, you work at the Pink Pussycat on West 4th Street? I'm like, yeah, I work at the Pink. He's like, you're hired. And so that's how I got hired at Drexel. And that began it. It was on the foreign exchange desk, the currency desk, as a clerk. Had to go to Chicago, spent a few months in Chicago, which is at the time and part of the CBOT, the Chicago Board of Trade, has a division called the IMM. On the IMM, they traded futures and currencies. Eventually, my job became arbing the futures against the cash market, which is a whole nother conversation, but you have to learn your way through Chicago. So thus it began.
So a few takeaways that I'm going to parse that into for some of our folks that are thinking about getting into financial services, maybe want to go into investment banking or sales and trading, you were sending letters to executives, to CEOs saying, hire me. So you were playing offense. And one note I wrote that you said was you sent hundreds. And right now I know I work with a lot of college kids and some are struggling. Some are struggling trying to find jobs, and they're like, you get rejected a lot. And I think it's important for them to hear, hey, that's not today. That's kind of been always. It's just, how do you fight through it? And I guarantee you that particular audience is gonna like your story. And I'd call it from toys to trades. That's what I would call your jump there. So now let's take a look. You've been in financial services, 20 years or more than 20 years. You've run teams. What would be a leadership lesson or some type of leadership story and lesson that you would share with us that you've really had to learn by just experiencing it yourself?
Yeah, good question. So the first part of my answer does not answer leadership specifically, but for this business, if that's, if this is addressed to the audience who care about this business, there is nothing to me more important than you have to like the markets. If the markets, and so you go to the example of thinking it was cool to look things up in a Wall Street Journal, and it was the 70s. And I don't know what about the markets hits your kids that they're interested in this kind of business, but if the markets are not part of your wiring, if you don't have your own thought of, wow, when I took spring break last year with my friends and drove up to New Hampshire to go skiing, and there was a really long line, and the lift tickets were sold out. There was a really long line at the gas station. The hotel was really hard to book. We couldn't get a room. And then you said to yourself, then this year we went and there were lots of rooms and there were lots of lift tickets. And if your brain didn't kind of click into your own version of like, that's weird. Like, is it cheaper? Is there inflation? Is this like, or if your brain didn't work in a way to go, I'm trying to buy those new Nikes and they're sold out everywhere and you're paying for more for them on Stadium Goods and Farfetch and the secondary markets. And if you didn't say to yourself, man, I should really buy Nike stock. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is out of, if you don't have your own version of that, those real life examples, then this probably isn't the business for you, because people who think like that from a 13-year-old age really end up doing very well here, because everything's about the market. So you really have to be interested in the markets. It just has to be what you like to do. Leadership, I mean, leading by example, leading from the front, asking people to do things that you wouldn't do yourself. You know, you're CEO, I'm sure you had sort of the same. I'm not asking you to do something that I'm not doing as well. I'm doing it every day. If I'm asking you to stay, it's because I'm staying. I'm not asking you to stay so I can leave and go to the bar. If I'm using a system and I know it's clunky and you're telling me their system sucks, which, by the way, everyone says their system sucks. Like, I'm using it. We're having success here. There's a lot of other people here. So, you know, the two things I really believe in: leading from the front, leading by example, and networking. That, you know, this gets misconstrued, especially in this business, but being liked really helps. You know, Drexel Burnham, to stick on that, and I was a kid. I was 21, 22 years old when Drexel went down. It was well documented that they had no friends. And friends of, like, not friends, you don't do things to be liked, but being liked certainly helps you do things. And so being pleasant, being polite, really do help. Being a bully does not tend to work. And there have certainly been, you know, you all read about the bullies in this business. They make for great stories.
I'm gonna say they make great movies, but they don't probably make great long-term bankers.
Not great long-term records.
You know, I love your Nike story. It reminded me, you know, my son, when you know, he was playing high school lacrosse and travel lacrosse over the summer. It was tough for him to have a regular job. But I think when he was in 8th, 9th grade, he started Donch Resell selling sneakers. And I said, well, what's your premise? And ready for this, the premise was buy low, sell high. Like, so just, you know, that. And then I said, well, what's your target audience? And he said, well, you know, right now it's anyone who buy, but my favorite target market is moms. And I said, why? He goes, because moms are not price sensitive, but they want a pair of sneakers for their son or their daughter. Like, they won't negotiate. They just buy them. So, you know, kind of to what you talked about is
that's it.
Is your mind wired to be thinking like that? Okay. So Eric, I've gotten to know you over the last year or so, and you just talked about networking. And one thing that I absolutely find beyond fascinating is let's call it your friend group. So you've got your bankers, you've got your people at CIBC and all throughout Wall Street. I think you had a birthday where you had, you know, a group of celebrities, pro athletes, rappers that were there. Matter of fact, I went to a charity event with you. I had a Mets player. I had a rapper. I had executives. I think I had an actress. So walk me through this. Well, you are the most eclectic friend group I've ever met in my entire life. Like, what's your key to networking and the diversity of networking network that you have?
Yeah, I don't know what the key is. I mean, I like to say I don't know much, but I know a lot of people.
Yeah,
so we can start there. And I feel like I'm name dropping, and I don't want to name drop by bringing up some of the people. But the networking really does work. Don't pass up a networking opportunity. Networking is a full-time job at times. If you're looking for work, to go to your example of students today or people out of work today, networking is very important to do. Sometimes you have to schedule it, and you have to go do it when you're not in the mood, and you have to go be social, and you got to go to a dinner and you ain't feeling it. Networking tends to be, when you're trying to do it in business, tends to be very hard to do on Mondays and Fridays with business people, because Fridays I don't want to do it, and Mondays they're just getting back. So I found that when I've looked for jobs, I've been out of work myself. But the old adage, I like people, I'm a people person. I've been lucky in some of the people I've met in life, and then they introduced me to people, and I've formed my own relationship. So I know the breakfast you're talking about that we had a few months ago. I think it was in November in New York. Yeah, you want to name drop who they were?
I was gonna say, I know you don't want to name drop, but give us a few examples. Give our a few examples of the diversity of network that you hang
Well,
out.
so Brendan and I, for whoever wants to listen to this, we went to a conference together in the Caribbean, and our group that we spend most of our time hanging out with were team owners,
Yep.
professional team owners. One owned a basketball team, one owned a hockey team. Actually, two owned a basketball team, and one owned a hockey team. So one of the executives at our breakfast was a team owner of a New York hockey team, who's a close friend. In fact, I'm going with him to the Mets opener today, and we're going to the owner of the Mets suite because they're good friends. And so I've met that guy, whose name everyone probably can figure out who that guy is, and at dinner with him. And I wouldn't call him a close friend, but I have his phone number, right? If he's in your cell phone, I guess these days that's a close friend. I'm you and I are sort of peers in age, so a lot of the 80s and 90s rappers have become, some are close friends. So at that breakfast you're talking about, Eric B, I just spoke to him. Eric B and Rakim, paid in full, for those of you listening. I spoke to Eric, and he joined for dinner. In fact, the Sacramento owner who I'm referring to happened to land in town on Wednesday morning. So we grabbed dinner Wednesday night, and I texted Eric and said, you might want to meet this guy, because Chris, not only is he a team owner, and not only is he a former Harvard Law School guy and a former executive at Facebook, but he also ran for Attorney General in California a while ago. He lost to Kamala Harris, which is an extremely interesting story. And Eric B, the rapper, who's here, is still a New York guy, has political ambitions. And I said, you should come to breakfast and the dinner, and meet the guy. And so there's just another connecting people, networking opportunity. So
But to me, I think some of your secret sauce, if you will, if we're going to use that term on networking, is, like when you said you've got to like trading, you've got to like to look at markets. I think you enjoy connecting people. I think you hearing Eric B, a rapper, say, someday I might want to go into politics, you being at a dinner with somebody who ran for politics, I just think you just naturally say, I had to put these two guys together. And you just have a way of making everyone feel comfortable. You're passionate about it. It reminds me of a book by Malcolm Gladwell, one of my favorite authors, and he talks about different personality types. And I'd say you're a connector. You just enjoy, because like you getting those two people together, it really doesn't benefit you, but you just getting them together continues to fortify your network, and you get joy. I could see you smiling while you were just telling the story, by just helping others get to where they want to go. And that's what you talk about, of not being a bully, but like having friends, in the business world.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, we all have egos, but we all find it very hard to talk about ourselves in that kind of way. But I really do. I enjoy people. I enjoy those conversations. I do get a lot of pleasure out of it. I thought that breakfast that we went to, so we went to an event and then grabbed a few of the people from the table who were friends, and we all grabbed breakfast. And yeah, one is an actress and the daughter of a very big sports exec. And I don't remember exactly. Eric B was at did Eric come to breakfast? Or I think he took off. John came to breakfast.
Yeah.
A woman who's a CEO came to breakfast. So yeah, no, I really enjoy that. And hand on heart, I do that. It's all natural. These people are friends. Like Eric is a friend and Chris is a friend. So having two friends at dinner was totally normal thing to do. I've met 1 million people through 1 million people, and many of those once removed people become friends. I mean,
Yeah.
real friends. So there are a bunch of sports alumni who I consider some of my best friends. There's a bunch of actors and both male and female who I consider some of my best friends. And text has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Text has changed a lot of ways that we're able to have time in the day. Like, I don't know if you could hear my phone dinging in the background, but it's an actor friend texting me saying, "What's up, E?" Right? So every now and then I do get a little starstruck, which is always strange when it happens, because I'm around a lot of these people, and they have friends, and they bring people, and you meet people, and you talk to people, and then every now and then, like, a starstruck thing will happen, and it's a weird, like, you can't even speak. So that's happened a couple of times, which is strange in strange ways.
I just can't picture. I would have to I'd have to see a recording of you not being able to speak, because I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm buying
thank
everything
you.
else. I'm not sure if I'm buying that. But okay, so let's switch gears, but actually not much. We're just gonna veer to the right a little bit. I know charitable work and charity work is important to you. At CIBC, you have Miracle Day. And, I think one of the keys to networking, and the key for like me referring you to somebody, for John referring you to somebody, for Eric referring you to somebody, is kind of like, are you a good guy? Like, we don't refer and we don't connect bad people, because then that's kind of us. So you're seen as a good person. You're seen as a reliable person. You're seen as somebody who puts good into the world. So just talk to me about the CIBC Miracle Day. Talk to me about your charity work. Tell me how you weave all that in to your business world.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a harder answer. Well, I could give you some facts. So CIBC Miracle Day is not my idea. It began 40 years ago. CIBC is a Canadian bank. There were some brokers in Canada, apparently 40 years ago, whose names I can't recall, who decided, for whatever reason, I'm sure there were personal reasons, on the first Wednesday of December, this will be the 40th year of Miracle Day. They give their commissions to children's charities. So that's where the idea of Miracle Day began. I've been here at this bank since 2009. And so I took over running the U.S. version of Miracle Day, which I guess had existed before me, but had dissipated away. So I turned it into my own version. It's very different than it's one particular day where we give our commissions and profits to children's charities in the area. And look, a whole nother conversation, everyone who does that work, this charity work, and I've gotten to know some of the people who run these organizations, none of them are bad. I mean, people who, we're sitting here talking about getting into finance. Imagine spending your life, your full-time job is every day and going in and doing this. So I have admiration for those people and believe in giving back. I have friends, a lot of friends, who really believe their mission, and very successful friends who really believe their mission in life is giving back. One of my closest friends is an actor and still lives in Brooklyn and very successful, and really believes, and still has his own foundation, which I'm happy to support. And he put me on the board of it. And he comes in for Miracle Day because he's a well-known actor. And so we help raise money, and then it's all sort of self-fulfilling. And then we give money to his foundation. But every Saturday he goes and does the work. I don't do that work. I don't do that. So I'm admiring those people, and the randomness, I guess we're on video. I could show you. There's a crazy picture from this past December's Miracle Day. So we have the concept is, and I cannot say that I came up with this term. So JFK Jr. was on the board of a foundation called Robin Hood, which is the largest poverty fighting foundation in.
That's actually the breakfast that
you're at the Robin Hood breakfast. That's right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know JFK Jr. I got starstruck when I bumped into JFK Jr. once. JFK Jr. apparently said, he didn't say it to me, he said it to a Robin Hood board member. He said, rich people love celebrities and celebrities love money. So if you put the two of them together, you can really raise a lot of money for a lot of good.
I think that's some wisdom.
And so that's very, JFK-esque thing to say. And so stealing from that, the Miracle Day that we run here in New York is we're a bank and we trade and people are paid well and all that. So we put rich people or rich place together with celebrities who love that, and we raise a lot of money for charity. And so the celebrities who come in to support, many of them have their own foundations at this stage in their lives, but so putting them all in the same place at the same time is really random. Like, to see these people together, you see connections go on between actors who haven't seen each other in a long time, or athletes who you didn't realize all played in sort of the same era and know each other. It could be, a champion boxer and a 4-time World Series winner and a 2-time NBA champ and one of the greatest rappers, Daryl McD, DMC, and Melly Mel, who's, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the New Edition kids. And they're all here at the same time in the same place. And it's very hard to get them to come around and do the work that we need to do to raise the money, because they're having so much fun seeing each other. And if you see the pictures of them all hanging out together, it's really wild. A 2-time Super Bowl winner, a 4-time World Series winner, a Grammy Award-winning artist, Academy Award-winning Lorraine Bracco comes in, Aidan Quinn comes in, Tony Danza comes in. And so having them all together at the same place at the same time is really wild. And they help do the networking for the next year. And there's more people, and they're very admiring of each other too. It's very wild. And some of those people become friends. I mean, like real friends. We see each other in the summers, we stay at each other's homes, they become friends.
It goes back to, you're doing good things, you're doing good work, you're connecting people, you're helping out in the world, and people want to be a part of that. People want to feel good. People want that adrenaline, rush of giving back and being part of something special like Miracle Day. So let me ask you now. Let's switch gears from networking and financials, or networking and charity, to as you know, I have 2 college kids that both want to go into investment banking. They look at your background and say, wow, if I'm wildly successful, I could have a career like Eric. What advice would you give to college age kids that I think are the greatest generation coming up? I think they're smart. I think they're ahead. I think they're doing internships. I think they're leveraging tools like AI. I think they're really, really special. But what advice would you give to them as somebody who's, made it to the top, and looking back? What would you say to those college kids that are looking to get into, financial services, investment banking, trading? What advice would you give?
Well, and I actually do give this advice. This is new. I mean, you got to have a view. If you want to be in this business, you got to have a view, and everyone's got opinions. But it's different to have an opinion and a view, and you got to have a view. You got to have a view on some basic market things, and you don't have to be right. If you were always going to be right, we'd all be on our G5s to our own private islands, right? So not everybody is right.
Yeah.
And so this sounds a little bit Bonfire of the Vanities, but it's not. You got to have a view, and you got to be able to explain why you have the view. And it cannot sound the advice to kids like yours looking to get in this business. Have a view, have a little bit of research behind the view, but the view can be very based on real life things like selling sneakers.
Yeah.
Or, in fact, when I was a cold caller at Payne Weber, this is a true story. There used to be a sneaker called, it was called LA Gear. Do you remember LA Gear?
I don't, but no, go ahead.
There was a sneaker brand called LA Gear in the 80s. In fact, LA Gear is Skechers. LA Gear went bankrupt and reemerged out of bankruptcy as Skechers.
Oh, wow.
But I was just out of college. It was the mid 80s. And LA Gear was the hot sneaker to buy. I don't think I bought a pair, but, and they had a terrible commercial, which I would sing for you if I could possibly put 2 notes together. And I'm a cold caller. And if you've ever seen an equity research report, which to be frank, I hadn't, sitting at a desk in the Payne Weber building, which is in Rockefeller Center at the time, and a research report landed on the desk, and talked, whenever you see a research report on an equity, it tells you buy, hold, or sell, right? Those are there are other categories, but it generally says to buy it, to hold it, or sell it. And there was one that came out that says buy, and I think it actually said strong buy or favorite buy or something, and it was to buy LA Gear, which was a public company. And I come out of school and I'm like, LA Gear sucks. Like, no one's buying LA Gear. Like, and I know it's weird, and this is sort of goes to like your kids. They know more than me, who's locked in this windowless room 10 hours a day, because they're out there and they know LA Gear sucks, and I don't. So I'm making this up, but I picture some guy in a bad suit on a high floor in a windowless room writing a research report on why LA Gear is so wonderful, and their earnings are this, and their creative director is that, and their CEO is this, and whatever it is that this research report said, and he's come up with this research. And this guy's probably never even seen a pair of LA Gear. I mean, again, I'm making this up, but
Yeah, sure. No,
and I'm like, LA Gear sucks. Like, I wouldn't buy LA Gear. And I didn't know anything, but LA Gear went bankrupt pretty soon after. Stock went straight down and went bankrupt after. So it's okay to have a view that isn't based on the fact that you've read what today's GDP is, or what the trade balance is, or what the interest rate differential is between two countries. I mean, you're welcome to have that in your view, but to have a view, the view can be as simple as, I believe gas prices are going up, or your view is, I don't know, all I hear about is inflation, but everyone's still buying everything and this doesn't cost more. Or the view could be, hey, I know the Fed. You generally want to know what the Fed's doing. If you want to get in this business, you got to know a basic thing. You want to have a view, is the Fed hiking or cutting? I mean, you really do want to have that basic economic view. So is the Fed hiking? Okay. And what does that mean? Or, hey, I know the Fed's hiking. It's supposed to slow things down, but I went on spring break and sure wasn't slowed down. There were more people there than ever. Or, hey, things are really slow. There is nobody there. You got to have a view. So to be in this business, you got to have a view. You got to be able to explain it. It's totally fine to explain it on nothing more than no one's buying LA Gear sneakers because they suck. That's fine. But you got to have a view, and you got to be able to talk about it, and you got to be able to defend it. And you got to be able to live with the fact that it's not going to be right a lot of the time. And so going back to my bonfire saying, which I'll credit one of the founding members of one of the world's largest hedge funds with this saying, and I don't know if he said it, but I made it my own. The saying is, it's not about being right, it's about making money. And we could spend a whole bunch of time talking about how that's true and how to do that. So you tell me if you want to go there, but you got to don't worry about being wrong. It's not about being right. It's about making money. If that's what you wanted, if this is the business you want to be in, you're going to have to get used to being wrong a lot of the times.
It's interesting when you were talking about having a view and researching and having facts behind your view and what you're doing. It actually brought me back to, I started as an engineer and I was coding, and then I moved over to account operations, and then they put me in a sales role. I still remember in this fancy boardroom, I'm pitching my first really big sales deal, and someone who became a mentor to me, his name was Bill Durancheck, just starts hammering me. This is a bad deal. You're pricing it wrong. You're saying you're going to win. This isn't, and just is crushing me in the meeting. And I remember I was fighting back on every point, and, fighting professionally, but going, no, I do. Here's why I think we're going to win. And here's why I think this price is good. And I'm pushing back. I came out and I told guys who were much older than me, man, there's no way they're going to approve it. I just got absolutely obliterated by our business unit president. Well, we won, and we used to do these things called win parties. I remember at the win party, Bill comes up and he congratulates me, and I look him right in the eye and I said, and to think you didn't want to do this deal, you were against it. And he said, oh no, I wanted to do this deal. I said, no way, you killed me. He goes, no, I just wanted to see if you believed in your own view.
That's a good leader too. Yeah, and that goes on a lot.
He just wanted to find out, if I wanted to do X, if I wanted to bid on this deal at this price in this competitive mode, did I really believe in my own view? And by the way, I think if I had if I had said, hey, okay, Mr. Durancheck, if you think that we shouldn't bid, then we shouldn't, he probably would have pulled the plug and said, why are we going to do this if the person leading it doesn't believe in it? So when you say it's having a view, and it's not being necessarily right or wrong, but it's like, what is the premise of your view? Why do you feel that way? And oh, by the way, if 2 months later, the dynamics change, the Fed goes up, gas prices go up, you go, you know what? I'm changing my view. I now think this. And, you're in a market where it's very dynamic. You've got to consistently change your view. So
A great example. You're totally right. And we go through that exact scenario of challenging every day. It could be a view on a position somebody wants to take on the trade floor. It could be on a hire. And you come to me and say, I want to hire this person. I will challenge the hell out of you. And you'll think I'm telling you no. And I just want to hear why you want to hire that person, because you live and die by your hires, or you want to start up a business, a certain product, or you want to get into something, you want to go work on something with a certain client, or you want to travel. Those challenges and watching the person back it up and stand by it. Look, we're all going to make mistakes. I mean, there are so many books written about it. This isn't my wisdom at all. You will make mistakes. You will be wrong. You will fail. And that's just part of pushing ahead. It goes on every single day on a trading floor, more than anywhere else I could possibly think of. You're wrong every day, lots of times. It's not about being right. It's about making money.
Well, think of your business. I'm going to get this probably a little wrong, but 365 days a year. I think the markets are up 40 or 50 days a year and actually down 300 plus days a year. So, it's a matter of, having your thesis, backing it up, changing it, tweaking it when it needs to. But this has been great. If I kind of go through everything, what was fun is, Uncle Pete got you started as a trader. You then talked about how it wasn't an easy path to land the job. You were sending hundreds of resumes direct to CEOs. And then when you broke in, it was as a near minimum wage cold caller, but you broke in and then you kept moving up. So you had that resilience, you had that stick-to-itiveness. You faced hundreds of rejections. And then what really accelerated your career, other than just, recognizing when you were right, recognizing when you were wrong, was being a good human being, being a good person, connecting people, in building truly the best network of anybody I've actually met in my career, and giving back. And I think when I just look at how much you've given our audience today to think about, are you giving back? Are you networking? Are you willing to send in 100 resumes and get rejected? And then when you do get hired, kind of get hired into a crappy job, but just be willing to do that. So lots of good life lessons, lots of wisdom, resilience here today from you, Eric. So thank you so much for your time. Once again, Eric Price, Managing Director and Head of U.S. Markets, Capital Markets for CIBC. Eric, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
This has been The Fearless Experience with Brendan P. Keegan. If you want to learn to live and lead fearlessly, go to brendanpkeegan.com.